Hello, everyone, and welcome to the August 2nd session of Unlearning. Today, we are talking about Unlearning DEI is Dead. So this is not a postmortem. This is not a, coming together to mourn the passing of DEI. Rather, we are pushing back on that idea, and we have the most amazing panel, as always. Jay, Amy, I don't even know how we get these people to say yes. It might be the small pony that we send each of them, but whatever. Whatever we're doing is clearly working. We're going to give people another couple of moments to arrive. And while we are waiting, as always, please grab what you need to be here, present, and silent. So get your popcorn, get your sweet tea, get your 5th cup of coffee that you said you were going to quit this summer, but then you did a whole week of it. And then your partner was like, please go back on the coffee. You're mean. You're mean. Please just drink the coffee. Whatever you need to be fully here, go grab it right now, run to the restroom. And then when you come back on, let me see those beautiful faces from all of those far off spaces. Did anybody read that article in the New Yorker all about the history of country music just recently? Oh, okay. Everybody Google that, check it out, because very fascinating. I had no idea, obviously originated in a very multicultural space and medium, but then it was, as always, an intentional desire to divide so that one became what we call like bro music now. Anybody hear this? And then the other is like Tracy Chapman and Taylor Swift, right? Like it's no longer classic country. Everybody should check out this article, really fascinating. And so then I listened to an entire mashup of Taylor Swift and Tracy Chapman this weekend while painting my cupboards, because I was like, I gotta fight the resistance. Ben's giving me a look. Okay, you gotta read the article. It'll make sense. It'll make sense. I'm not doing a good job of explaining it. Welcome, everybody. If this is your first time, let's go over some guidelines. So as we are sharing today, you can at any time turn on closed captions at the bottom of your screen. You're going to look for something that says CC, closed captions, at the bottom of your Zoom screen. You can activate those. You can even cast in different languages. So something to check out if that would improve your experience here. Live ASL interpretation is being provided by Pro Bono ASL. This is why, as we're presenting, you're going to hear us practicing using our name as we switch the speaker. So I will say, this is Lindsay. This helps the interpreters differentiate between who is speaking at a different time. If you haven't read our community guidelines, please do so. As much as we are trying to create a space of community, we are also trying to be intentional about how we create community. Most of us in Western paradigms, especially in the United States of America, have little to no experience of community. And so we're really trying to unlearn what it means to be in community, which is I enter in and I'm afraid to speak up. I'm afraid to share ideas. I'm afraid. 2, I am in community. I am embraced. I am included. I can come as I am, and that is enough. Today's session will be recorded. We do that because although like 80 to 100 people say, yes, we're coming live, another 200 normally watch the recording. You can find all of those on YouTube to go back and watch past episodes of Unlearning, or I've heard that certain people use it in their classrooms at their universities, which is super exciting. Unfortunately, you're not going to be on the recording. So unless you come up and speak and you're like, Lindsay, I have a great question. Just smile like, no, you don't have to do that. But you will make the recording if you come up onto camera and speak. If you just use your voice off camera, or if you're typing something into the chat window, that will not be on the recording. So don't worry about that. At the end, we will drop you a reflection. Your feedback is so important to us. I was just sharing with our panelists today some of the feedback that we commonly receive Please give us your feedback. Let us know what we're doing well, what we could be doing better, how we could be not just inclusive, but expansive in the ways that we are holding this space together. Your voice is necessary. Pro Bono ASL provides our interpretation services. Today, we are joined by the one and only Great Flo, as well as another Pro Bono team member. Can somebody, they're not on my screen, can somebody drop the, oh, Darla, there it is. Darla and Flo are providing our ASL interpretation today. Please do us a favor. Amy just dropped into the chat window there a petition that we want to all take a moment to sign today to support our community, our deaf community, in making sure that they have legislation that pushes equity forward for the deaf community. So all of us have to be engaged in the practice of equity for all different identity markers, even groups that we do not share identity with. That is the work of liberation. If you're looking to bring some liberation work into your organization, the team at LTHJ Global believes that diversity is the norm. However, we run into a lot of people and organizations that do not have systems that allow diversity to be the norm. So we got you. We're here to support you when you're ready. Just reach out to us at lthjglobal.com. Or if you really put two and two together, you probably figure out what my email is as well. If big consulting budget is not a budget that your organization can afford right now, check out Sojourn. We spent the last year over this labor of love. I'm going to say it was actually harder than birthing my two children. We can talk about that over a drink later. But this labor of love to build a my-size, affordable DEI tech platform to help small businesses and nonprofits also advance their DEI strategy. So no excuse not to get started. We have thought about everything that you need, and we've built it into that platform. Some upcoming workshops: Disrupting Aggression with the great Robin Force Counts. If you've ever seen the anti-racism journey presented in any of our trainings, this research comes from the one and only Robin Force Counts. So check that out on Friday, August 11th. And Sonia Layne-Gartside on our panel today will be teaching a workshop on fear in leadership on Thursday, August 17th. I know I'm going to be there with my popcorn and my slippers on, so please join us on the 17th. Let's take a breath together, fully entering in this space, inhaling in. Exhale, blowing it all out. Make it an ugly exhale. Oh, yeah, yeah, get it. Get it, get into the toes. Look at this panel. I mean, yeah, really, just look at them. Ava Williams, Veronica S. Smith, Sonia Layne-Gartside. We are going to be delving into unlearning DEI, and it's not dead. Sonia is an accomplished global consultant, coach, author, and bungee jumper, which I was like, why, Sonia? Why? But she loves it. A cheerleader of people and ideas, she holds certifications as a DEI specialist, master trainer, change manager, and strategist. Somehow, I don't know how it didn't make it into this list. She is also the mother of metaphors. She has a metaphor for every situation and occasion, and it's always the best. If she stops being a DEI consultant, I hope she opens a card store. She's been co-creating with corporations for the past 12 years, helping leaders to champion the behaviors that create a more equitable, inclusive, and diverse culture and climate. She is also the author of the book, Workplace Anxiety, How to Refuel and Re-Engage. Stop lying to yourself. You know that 2/3 of you need that book. So go ahead and get that book later today. We all need to refuel and re-engage and recognize the ways that anxiety is something that in this current society that we are existing within, we're all trying to manage. We're not trying to figure out if we have it. You got it. we're trying to manage it. So go ahead and pick up that book. It's an amazing read. Sonia, Layne-Gartside, welcome to the virtual couch. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. And now I will steal the mother of metaphors.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Just write a quote book next. Write a quote book next. Tell us, how do you eat an elephant, Sonia?
One bite at a time. Not
There
that we
it is.
advocate eating elephants. I like to always add that part in.
Exactly. And maybe some of the metaphors outside of context, we need to think about that. Ava Williams is the CEO of Solutions Co. Consulting. There's a big debate over the SCCO, the SCC, right? Everybody wants to add an extra C in there. She is a DEI consultant, speaker, and facilitator. An experienced diversity, equity, and inclusion consultant with over a decade of experience with organizational assessment, strategic planning, and equity-centered change management. What's already standing out to me, and maybe everybody in the audience is realizing this, is notice that all of these consultants working in DEI, nobody has a 3-month certificate and then put out their card to say, I'm a DEI expert, but I'm on my soapbox. I'll come back to that later. Ava has led project teams focusing on identifying and addressing inequities for various leaders and executives at over 100 organizations. She's known for introducing frameworks and tools beyond conventional DEI discussions, urging audiences to imagine how their work can build on an organizational culture that strives for belonging for all and delivers tangible and measurable outcomes for communities affected by structural inequities. Ava Williams, welcome, welcome. What do you mean? So wait, you didn't just like do like a 6-week DEI course and then, you know, start your company?
Hello, Lindsay. Thank you for starting us off like this. This is Ava, and no, that is not how we got started. A labor of love, as I'm sure many of my fellow panelists know. Most of our journeys are very unique in how we got here, but we are here nonetheless.
Yes, and it's been a journey. There's tenure behind those initials. Yes. Veronica S. Smith just celebrated her 21-year wedding anniversary, was it? Yes, yes. I was there. I was in the room where it happens. One of the coolest wedding anniversary celebrations I've ever been to. There was a live set of music played, just saying. Veronica brings over 30 years of experience working with clients to assess strengths and opportunities for improvement within their workplace related to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and creating a culture of belonging where everyone can thrive. Veronica has been immersed in advancing equity first in the environmentally friendly design and construction industry, then in science, technology, engineering, and math fields, and the nonprofit, philanthropic, and government sectors. Oof, that is so much to just roll around in my mouth. She became a data scientist in the 2000s and founded Data to Insight to use data to advance racial, gender, environmental, and social justice causes. Veronica gets up in the morning to partner with people to do better when it comes to creating organizations and communities where people and the planet can thrive. Welcome, Veronica S. Smith, to the virtual couch. Let's just delve in here. Veronica, kick us off. You know, I see a theme between your work, Ava's work, and Sonia's work, which is that DEI is both a combination of people and the science of people, the study of people and systems and how people work together, but also this aspect of measurement. And I don't know, let me just, that seems very confusing. I thought DEI was just like, we got together over a fire, we talked about our feelings, nothing was ever resolved. And then we decided we actually just hated everybody and we went home. And that was the work. Is that not the work?
Well, learning how to love each other is really the work, right? I mean, and I think that you talk about, this is Veronica, and you talk about measurement going along with, these touchy-feely things of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I think the reason that in many organizations, leaders who are highly analytical, they like to have things that are easy to measure. And so when you talk about creating a culture of belonging, which is really at the heart of, building a multicultural organization, is that for all, creating that culture of belonging for all. I think historically, we have not done a great job of measuring things that are not easy to measure. And when you're working on creating a multicultural organization and you see and understand the organization as a complex adaptive system, that measuring solutions to complex problems is not as easy as simple or technical problems. And so it's measuring how you're doing and as a multicultural organization, and whether you're seeing differences as deficits or differences as assets or somewhere in the middle, is something that is not easy to measure, and we know how to do it. And so I think that's where there's kind of that intersection of education and learning and unlearning, that yes, we can measure the culture of an organization. And in fact, if we are really going to be successful at this, that we need to do it, because kind of one of the things that has come out of our analytical thinking is the truism that if you can't measure it, you can't know how you're doing.
Ava, can you jump in here, in thinking about all of this rhetoric kind of going around, all of these articles, forgive me, this is Lindsay, all of these articles going around saying, such and such organization, they suspended their DEI work because they saw that people didn't like the training, or such and such organization, they stopped their work because they noticed that there was pushback to the work. Is there some element that, as Veronica was saying, we're in the land of complex systems here, meaning there's not one solution that works every time. How is DEI doing a great job of selling or not selling that there's no just one and done, that, just because people started the summer of 2020 doesn't mean that by the summer of 2023, they've solved racism, homophobia, transphobia, ableism, jingoism, alloy.
Yes. This is Ava. That's a phenomenal question. I don't see it as much anymore with the clients that we work with, but I think in the beginning, most folks just wanted this solution, like, tell me what to do, tell me how to fix it. And there was a lot of this mentality out there, I think in the industry, because people were, they could start to see like that what they were doing was harmful and was not the direction that they wanted to stand for. And so I think, just our natural human reaction is to want to fix it. And like, that's what we want to do as humans. But sometimes people don't realize that it is a process. And I tell people all the time, my journey, just, we use a 4-phase model, and my journey to get from phase 1 to 3 was just 20 years. And that's for me. Mm-hmm. And so when we talk about organizations who are now these collections of individuals, we're like 10xing, 30xing that 20-year journey that I myself had. And so, with the help of consultants and with experts and other folks, you can accelerate some of that learning, but there still is hard work to be done. And I don't want to underscore that at all. Like, the work is hard and it is for a purpose. And so, that's what I'll say there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Sonia, can you add on to that? And, you've done this work globally. Mm-hmm. What is it that you see that has people quit so early in the race?
I think this is Sonia, and it's following on to what Ava is saying, which is absolutely correct. It's a journey. And corporate world in particular is built for immediate solutions. You're measuring, as Veronica is talking about. And so this is a journey that you may need to get from 1 to 10, and everyone wants to go from 1 to 10 immediately. But that's not how it happens. That's not how we change. That's not how we transform. You have to go from 1 to 2, then 2 to 3, then 3 to 4, 4 to 5, and it doesn't feel good. And so when you take humans or human nature, we're in discomfort, it's going to take a while, then that is often without an intervention, without someone to help you and guide you along the way, an equation to give up too early.
Yeah, this is Lindsay. I'm reminded of in Isabel Wilkinson's book, Cast, she talks about the intentionality that went into building our current structure and system that we exist within. And if you allow, that was a good 250 years project that now we are back and forth trying to dismantle while people are simultaneously trying to resurrect said system, right? What is it? Is it the mothers of the revolution who, after the Civil War, set in motion a practice to ensure that there was a rewriting of the history of the South's role in the Civil War? We need some of them on our team. That type of long game, I mean, those women don't quit. They've been at it for a good, do the math. When was the Civil War? Veronica, how do you coach individuals to not give up, to play the long game?
Yeah, it's that, I think that's a big challenge. And as you were talking about, like the time that, you know, it takes to get there, there's actually interesting data out there. And this is in this report that just recently came out by the Global Parity Alliance that talks about how there was over $7.5 billion spent in DEI in 2020, and that's projected to be doubled by 2026. And yet, despite that, and that's globally, and despite that, the measure that we have right now, our best estimate is to get to gender parity in the workplace around the world. We're 150 years away from that. And one of my sheroes, Katika Roy, has a company called Pipeline, and they actually provide dashboards for their companies that show how many years it would take them to get to gender parity in their organization, given, you know, their hiring plan. And for some companies, that's even longer. And we don't really have the necessary data to really be able to put a number to that for how long would it take to get to parity for LGBTQIA folks like me, or people of color, and people with different physical abilities. So this is a long game. And so the thing that we really coach our clients on is that you've got to look at this work as living into your values. So it's got to be values driven, and it's got to be mission and mission aligned. So it has to be it has to be a business imperative, because if it's not a business imperative, if it's not values aligned, then it's always just going to be something that's tacked on the side. And we all know that with strategic initiatives, if that's the case, that at some point it's going to peter out. And one of the things that we had success with a construction company that we worked with that was 50 years old is when we were talking with the executive leaders, and, you know, this thing called DEI, they were, you know, really like wrestling with it. And there were two things that came out of the work as we worked with them over a year. Is one, we talked to the leaders about their safety initiative and how that had evolved. And, you know, 30 years ago or more than 30 years ago, almost 50 years ago in the 70s, you know, construction sites were, you know, shorts, t-shirt, bring the dogs to the site. And then there was a really big accident that seriously harmed some folks. And one of the founders tapped the now CEO, 40 some years later, who was a lead, supervisor on the site, and said, we want to change this. And they tapped him to help build what is now a safety initiative that is throughout the organization, woven into the fabric. Safety is at the top of every agenda. They are recognized for safety through measurement, which didn't even exist back in the 70s, but now is actually conditional on them being able to even apply for some affordable housing contracts. They get insurance breaks because of how safe they are. It's all built, this new foundation, as you mentioned, a new structure has been introduced into that organization, and they're continually updating and developing that. And we talked to them about DEI is going to be like that. Like, you're now in this place where you've had kind of this this big crisis, and now you've got to figure out, how are you going to do the same thing that you did with safety for DEI? And the good news is that their values already, the values that they had, included respect, fairness, and generosity. And so when we help them with developing their next steps in their strategic initiative, we said, this is really about living out your those values. And how do you then build the structures to live out those values better?
Absolutely. This is Lindsay. And to what you said, Veronica, what is really fascinating sometime in doing this work and meeting with those same leaders is that part of their journey is to realize that subconsciously those values only apply to people that look like them. And beginning to identify that they had been conditioned, like all of us are invited in this society to be conditioned, that I have respect only for people with the same status and rank as I do. I have insert value here. And that is the work, to help people identify that but. Ava, what are some of the big myths that you have, encountered recently? I love reading about the anti-woke movement, right? Especially when I read where people think that term came from, which, as we all know, was actually a musician. But what are some of the myths about DEI being dead and gone, and that you've encountered that make you giggle?
Yeah, this is Ava. I love the title of this session, DEI is dead, because it just is, I get this question so much today, like in all of my speaking engagements. People are like, well, what are you doing? Like, with all of this, frenzy in the political market, like, is your job going away? Is the work that you're doing now unimportant? And I'm just like, I really haven't seen much of a change, I would have to say, from my perspective. I think over the last maybe 12 months, it's been a theme of folks who are really invested and interested in focusing on diversity, equity, inclusion, justice, belonging. You add your letters that are important to you. Those folks have doubled down, and they're like, we want to do this, and we want to do it in the right way. And we know that it's a commitment. And some of those folks have actually been burned in their first wave of consultant experiences, and are really curious and have learned something and really want to do it the right way. And so I'm seeing that on one hand. And then I'm also seeing folks who were already just kind of dipping their toes in. Those folks are like, I can't do it. And they're stepping all the way back. And so I'm good. Y'all are not ready for this. And hopefully there'll be some positive peer pressure from the folks who have really invested the time, energy, and resources to get back on the boat and to take another dip. But one thing I always say is that you cannot drag people along this journey. It just does not work that way. And so people really do have to be willing and make the time, make the commitment to change, which is not going to be an easy task.
Yes, this is Lindsay. I mean, and it's almost like any sales training you're going to have, right? Like, if the person's not even window shopping, right, it's really hard to sell them the jacket in the window. you have to find those, and this is for those other consultants on the call, as Ava said, there is a large and still growing market out there, especially as we have new leaders, stepping up into CEO roles or into operational roles, who they've grown up, and this has always been an aspect of the organization's work. It's not something that developed during their career. Sonia, how about for you? Ava named something that I was kind of joking about earlier, about people coming to realize that not all DEI consultants are DEI consultants. What is it that I should be looking for when I really am looking for that type of expertise and support to help move the needle, to help establish a DEI function within my organization? What is it that you're looking for in that type of partner?
This is Sonia. That's a really great question because it's contextual. It depends on where you are in your journey. If you're at the beginning of your journey, if an organization has never talked about it before, you are looking for someone who understands the value system of diversity, equity, and inclusion, who understand what it means to be an anti-racist organization or have a foundation of anti-oppression, but who also understand how to help you move through the stages of your journey. So it's not enough just to have some person who's experienced and who's done it before, who've gone into an organization and help them, dismantle barriers to in their systems to be more inclusive with people, but to also, which is very, very difficult, enable you to take the journey at the speed that is essential. Because I like to say, you don't want to break the organization trying to make it better, trying to make it a more inclusive place to be. And so it's always, and we talk about this with clients as well, how far in advance are you from your client? You can't be too far ahead. If not, it's going to be too much pressure and you're going to just break their spirit to begin with. And Ava said it, where they dip their toes in and then they say, oh no, I can't. So it's always understanding cultures. It's some person who understands how to change. Change management is so important in these because DEI is really about transforming the culture of an organization. And that research tells us to change a culture takes at least 5 years. So you really need some person who understands change management and how to bring people along in a journey. And so as you briefly mentioned before, some person who just went and did a 3-month certificate in DEI cannot help you there. I generally get calls from people who say, my company sent me for a certificate. Now they're giving me this task and I don't know what to do. And it's okay. We'll help you. Yeah.
This is Lindsay. Those are my favorite calls, where somebody goes, I realize this is an entire body of work. We're going to popcorn with some nice heated questions here, and any of you can take this, right? Because I am a trained HR leader, am I a trained DEI leader by default? Veronica, why no? Oh, Heather Nicole also said no. They're not on the panel, but I saw them shaking their head. Veronica, why am I not just a default DEI leader?
Well, actually, this is a good way for me to answer one of the questions you kind of given us in advance, is like, what is DEI? And so one of the things that maybe not everyone knows is that that about 40 years ago, there was a group of social justice and diversity leaders who kind of came together with traditional organizational development leaders And these are all kind of areas that are in that HR realm, human resources and organizational development. And again, just because you have an HR certification doesn't necessarily mean, OD, I'm going to call it OD. Those are two different, areas of study, and HR traditionally has really prepared you for, hiring and firing and retention and maybe recruiting. All HR professionals don't necessarily have recruiting backgrounds. The legal aspects of, maintaining a workforce, that type of thing, and some training, it can include some, learning and development, but not always. And then on the organizational development side, a lot of that has been, again, and often is, intermingled. Some HR consultants will have that OD. And what I see diversity, equity, and inclusion and accessibility, creating cultures of belonging as a subset of what I would call multicultural organizational development. And there's a book that I think Amy's got a link to that's going to drop in there, that there's a chapter there by Bailey Jackson about the development of multicultural organizational development, where social justice and diversity leaders who are focusing on that aspect, separate of organizational development, got together with OD practitioners, and then this multicultural organizational development field was born. And so that and diversity, equity, and inclusion work, the type of thing that people have probably seen in recent years, that includes training, that includes professional development, that includes ERGs, that includes, book clubs, that includes all of these things. That is underneath that umbrella of multicultural organizational development, where we're trying to, again, help organizations be able to perform as complex adaptive systems and be healthy, and to be equitable and diverse and inclusive. And so one of the things that HR and organizational development under our system of white supremacy was founded on our model of exploitative capitalism. And so the fundamentals of diversity, equity, inclusion, and social justice are not foundational to that model. So what we're seeing in today's I think one of the seismic shifts that happened after George Floyd's murder and the civic uprisings in the United States is that there was really an awakening to the need to really replace the foundation of exploitative capitalism with this infrastructure of empathy and diversity and inclusion and equity. And that's the seismic shift we're feeling right now in the United States, where it's just, again, some people are doubling down on that because, again, the evidence is overwhelming. If you're able to do that well, it's not only the right thing to do, but it also will mean that your organization is going to be a leader financially and be able to really survive into the future.
Yes. This is Lindsay. DEI tech leader Aparna Ray, I saw this, she shared this when I was brushing my teeth this morning and also on my phone because I'm a multitasker. There was all this news about all of these Black women DEI leaders leaving these big companies, coming out of the kind of media entertainment industry. I don't know if you saw it. And so then everybody was like, again, DEI is dead, all the Black women are leaving. But then Aparna made a clever observation. I think it's going to be in her newsletter this week, so be sure to check that out, that of the DEI leaders, about 80% of them are white women, and they are not leaving their organizations. Ava, what does that gentle head nod mean? Let's talk about it. We got comfortable now. Everybody's already at the bottom of their coffee. We're ready to have the real shit talk now. What's going on there? Why are the Black women leaving, but 80% of the white women are staying?
I've worked with so many clients. I'm not even going to broach that question. This is Ava, by the way. I was like, I don't want to touch that, but what I want to touch on is something slightly related. I've been in rooms with chief level Black women, Black male leaders, when they're the only one, right? And they've been tasked with this duty. And I've seen the internal struggle that they have on their faces. Like there is a target on their back, but also their livelihood is at stake if they say something that someone else doesn't like in the room. And so I can't speak to the white woman experience. That's not my experience, but I can tell you from what I've seen, like those folks are not able to do their jobs effectively. And there's this internal moral dilemma that it appears that they're having from their interactions with me. It's like, they can't say the things, but I'm okay saying them. As the external consultant, I've like taken that mantle on, and I'm like, this is what you hired me to do. And I'm so okay with being fired. Hasn't happened yet, knock on wood, but I've really taken on this role is like, you know, to carry some of that burden, because I think that Black women in particular in those roles feel the weight of that work differently. Like literal livelihoods, how I feed my children are on the line by what they do and don't say. And so I think that's just a reality that we all need to acknowledge and support where we can. So that's what I'll add. I'm not answering your other question.
Oh, he's going to this is Lindsay, throw me under the bus. I'll answer the question. But a question before that. Sonia, I feel like only in DEI do we have this, as Ava was saying, this kind of high bar that we're expected to deliver results in unrealistic timelines and at a 100% success rate every time. You know, obviously the police in the United States of America are not held to that bar. Why is it that in this field, there's no margin for error or mistakes? Otherwise we go, the problem is DEI altogether.
Well, I don't accept that. Whenever someone attempts to say that, so that's simply not true. I don't accept it. I don't believe it's true. And I'll tell you why. It's because a lot of people just don't understand what it is and what it takes. There's a lot of ignorance around DEI, and there's a lot of ignorance around, well, there's a lot of silence in organizations, I should say. And because there's a lot of silence, people who have the power to make a difference don't often know how people's lives are being impacted by barriers, by discrimination, by racism. And when you are not aware of what the issue is, then you will have unrealistic expectations about it. And so that's why I don't accept when someone says, well, it's always no, it's not. Do you understand what DEI is and what the process is? Because when you do, then you will know that your expectations are unrealistic and they're not valid. And so that's generally the position that I would take on situations like that. And I'm so sorry, I was to say this is Sonia at the beginning.
Hey, Lindsay, can I chime in about the 80% of white women who are, because so I can speak as a white, I can't speak for all white women, but as a white cisgender woman, as somebody who has been in HR, the history of the field of HR, and that's where DEI usually gets housed or comes out of. And the history of HR has been as an ancillary function to the C-suite executives, and that it has historically been kind of this, again, with an exploitative foundation, right? And I'm not saying that all companies are like this, but again, our exploitative capitalistic system basically has set up generally businesses get as much out of their people as they can for as little investment as possible. That's the exploitative model. And the HR function has, in that model, served as a place to really help leaders achieve that goal. And white women have been dominant in that field because of lots of different reasons, but one is that we have been seeing white women, again, as we know, in white supremacy, are an important part of holding up and white supremacy rules. And so white women have been represented in HR at high levels because they have been seen as the gatekeepers for the white men that are in the executive position. And so, and this represents one of the challenges of being a white woman in a white patriarchy, is that white women live at the intersection of privilege and oppression. And so we, like what Ava was talking about with Black women, although, you know, our experiences are different, but the thing that's the same is that when you're in that privileged position in the room with the C-suite executives that are predominantly white men, that you are trying, that what you try to do, if you're really dedicated as I was and am, to really finding the win-win for the people and the organization, so that it's not exploitative, but that it's really a win-win, which again, all the evidence keeps coming in to show that that's really the better way to go, then you're kind of walking this tightrope of like, how much does your privilege allow you to nudge the white men to do what's right, not only for people, but for the business in the long term, but requires them to change or, change their awareness, change their behavior that is not comfortable for them. And so, and again, if you're the only one in the room, the only woman, the only person of color in the room, you're at a distinct disadvantage. And so, so that's one of, and that has been the historic problem of HR, being able to really influence change, and especially structurally, when you don't have HR as a peer of the other C-suite executives, because often the HR person is reporting to the chief financial officer or the chief operating officer. And so you're not only in a dominant group, you're in a subordinate group. And so those are some of the dynamics that white women have been struggling with, and that no matter whether you're a Black woman or a Black man or another person of color in those roles, if those structural issues are still there, everyone is going to have some similar issues about really moving and changing the organizational culture. And so I think as a white woman who is committed to liberation for all, one of the things that I've tried to do, in my role at Data to Insight, is to really partner with people of color and really build multiracial teams, so that we're all working together. Like I think you said this earlier about, we all, just because that isn't our identity, that we are working, because we know that liberation for my identity means liberation for your identity.
Yeah, this is Lindsay. Veronica, as you're saying that, a part of why I really wanted to do this show today and have you all here is to ask us all to question the underlying system that has us wanting to just throw DEI out altogether, right? We don't go, we just are going to get rid of human resources departments in organizations, or we're just going to get rid of the entire engineering team whenever there are mistakes in the code or in the, the building, whatever type of engineering you're engaged in. But failure to look at that within its context is almost, in itself, it means that the DEI work has not been done, or that we are still taking on the dominant narrative, right? It is so easy in our reductionist society to say, it's been 3 years, we haven't solved the issue, or there's been some pushback, or this one Black person in the organization said they didn't like the DEI workshop. And so now we're just going to get rid of all of the DEI workshops altogether, as opposed to stepping back and saying, might some of this resistance be that we want to just keep the status quo intact? We want to keep those with privilege still having the dominant amount of privilege, status, and rank, and those without it in the same subordinated roles. But instead, we let the news article run with DEI is dead or DEI is failing. I know there's somebody on this call today who's struggling. Either they are running their DEI consultancy and they're feeling what I would say, and Ava, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you kind of alluded to this too. What we've seen in our records over the year is that it was less about people not wanting to do DEI work. We had a bit of a slowdown in the first kind of quarter, beginning of quarter two, but it was more about people's economic uncertainty within organizations. It wasn't that their passion for advancing this work went away. It was that we thought we were on the verge of a global financial crisis, and we still might be. So purse strings got tight for a little bit. But somebody on this call is feeling as though they're not sure that they could continue with this work in their organization or within their own business. And I want to ask you all, what message would you like to give that to that person today? Ava?
This is Ava. I think Veronica was talking about this a bit earlier in, our framing of what DEI is in organizations. Like, it's not an add-on. For me, DEI, it's a way of being. It's a lens that I'm wearing, right, as I'm doing my work. And so, that sometimes costs very little. I can go to an unlearning session, free and open to the public, to get a new perspective. I could read a book, right? There are very low cost ways to, I think, maintain a journey if you don't have those bigger dollars. But of course, you can do so much more if you have bigger dollars to do, organizational transformation, partnering with other folks who have been in the space for a very long time, who can help you avoid some of those common pitfalls that you might do if you're trying to DIY it yourself. So I think that's the biggest takeaway for me, is that it is a way of being for your organization. And as a CEO, like, I take that so seriously. Like, it's in every decision that I'm making and how I run my business, or the way that we talk about our work, or the way that we talk about the news, or the way that we start the meeting, right? Like, it's in all those little millions of decisions that we're making every day.
Yes. Sonia?
Well, I would say, this is Sonia, DEI is not dead. Performative DEI is.
Oof.
That's what's dying.
Hopefully.
Oh, damn. This is listening. Damn.
That's what I was saying. Hopefully we can wish for that. I think that's a good wish for this panel.
Seriously, that is what it is. And, in changing, as a change manager, I always say to people want things to get better, but they don't want to do anything different. And DEI is knowing that you're going to have to do things different in order to transform the organization. And so if you are in DEI, then you are not to be worried, because as long as an organization has people and they are required to accomplish things through these people, then there is a need for DEI. True and real DEI. And if you are a consultant, you just need to figure out at which path, where are they in their journey, and help them there. Take them, meet them where they are, and take them to the next step. And that is always needed, regardless of whether it's DEIJ, it's psychological safety, it's emotional intelligence, whatever you call it. The value systems of DEI are needed in organizations. And of course, there is resistance. These are deeply embedded systems. And in any time you attempt to go into a system and dig out barriers and things that are deeply embedded, then you will get resistance. Resistance is a sign that it's working. Because people start to pay attention. Wait, something is happening. I don't know what it is, but I know that it's uncertain. I don't know how it's going to affect me. And so the first thing I'm going to do is to resist it. And so that resistance is a sign of success. Something is happening. And if you look at it and see that resistance as, to buy into that narrative that DEI is not working, no, That's the same thing as when somebody is attempting to convince me that my vote doesn't matter. Of course it matters, because if it didn't matter, you wouldn't spend so much time and money trying to convince me it doesn't. DEI matters. If it didn't, you wouldn't spend so much money trying to convince people it doesn't matter. Something is happening. There's a rumbling, there's a change that is coming, and you're afraid of it and you're attempting to stop it. And the goal of us who are in this field, who are not in this for just to make it look good or to say we are, but not do anything different, that goal is to recognize what that resistance is and stand firm and don't buy into the narrative. In fact, try to correct the narrative and identify where people need help to get to the next step, and then use the language that they can understand to help them get there.
This is Lindsay. About 10 of the things that Sonia said will be made into shirts and mugs after this call. So Amy, I hope you caught those, because damn. All right, Veronica, bring it home.
Man, I can't follow up with that. That was gold. The thing though, I think I will follow up with on that though, is for people that are in a situation, like you said, where maybe there's been a disruption, or maybe even, you know, their job, they feel like their job is on the line, or their livelihood, or they're really struggling, you know, with that resistance that Sonia mentioned and just are not seeing a way around it, is to take an opportunity to reassess. Because one of the things that is really vital for a long journey is that you keep taking care of yourself and that you recharge, because as we've talked about, this work, it's something that will probably, if you're committed to this work, you'll be doing it for the rest of your life. And so when you face that resistance or some type of threat to, you know, whatever, you know, you're doing, to really take a moment to really regroup and ask yourself, you know, am where I am, and especially if you're an internal person, if you're working within an organization, am I in a place where I feel like I can keep moving forward, even in some small way, like Ava was saying, and I can, you know, have some positive impact here? Or is the culture really just not ready for what I have to bring? I don't see a way, you know, in the near term or midterm to be able to, you know, offer what I really want to offer to this organization. And again, I don't want to be, you know, saying everybody quit your job, but I'm saying we all have to decide, you know, when we get to, you know, barriers, what is the best way we can take care of ourselves. And what I don't want to see is people really sacrificing themselves to advance DEI in an organizational culture that's going to eat them alive. You know, and, you know, we've all seen the horror stories of people losing their hair, you know, having nervous breakdowns, you know, things like that. And nothing is worth, you know, sacrificing yourself. And so really just emphasizing that, again, this is a journey. If you've hit a roadblock, it's time to reassess, think about, you know, creatively problem solve, get some advice, figure out how can you navigate that. And maybe there is a way forward where you are, and it's okay if there's not.
This is Sonia, and you know, that's so important what Veronica just said, because there's a time in your journey, you know, that saying when you have to decide whether to keep going or to give up. Both are valid. And if you find yourself an egg throwing yourself against a rock, all that's going to happen is you're going to break. And maybe that's not the journey. That organization is not the place for you. You have to fire organizations. You know, organizations do that. You know, they assess, are you of any value to me? Can we accomplish something together? And often, I say this in my book, people give up that right to others, to their leader, to their HR manager. You have the right, take that power and decide, is this the right space for me? Am I an eagle among ducks? I'm looking for the air and they're busy focusing on water. Now, there's nothing wrong with being a duck or nothing wrong with being an eagle, but if you're in the wrong space, then nothing you do, you're just throwing yourself against a rock. So go find some place where you are needed, because trust me, there is an organization out there that needs you. There is a department out there that needs you. And that's your role, to really say, if, as you say, you assess and you realize, okay, we are different, what I'm giving isn't needed here. Where is it needed? Go find it, because they're waiting for you.
Yeah. And I like to think about it like it's not necessarily giving up in a negative sense, but it's really saying no, and taking a different direction. And it also could be that you've done what you can at that organization, right? So it doesn't mean just because you're saying, I'm going to go somewhere else, that you haven't done some good there. And, and that's one of the things I would love to get a chance to, interview, people that are part of this cohort right now that are being let go, or they're walking away, and kind of understand more of the story there of, what there's lots of stories there, right? And that I do think that it's not the end for those organizations that, have let go or their DEI person has walked away. I think, like Ava said, they're just not ready to take that next step, but the seeds have been planted, and that, so again, thinking about this as more of an ecosystem model, right? That there's creative destruction going on, and that something new, will come out of this in a new cycle.
This is Lindsay. As you all are sharing, I'm also reminded that sometimes in this work, and when I'm speaking to people who are new in the work, you have a lot of people who come to this because they are a helper, right? We talk about that in the nonprofit sector. Lots of people come to that work because I'm a helper. And you have to be aware, you have to be doing your own eye work to recognize the ways that success is tied to your identity. And you need to untether that. Because in this work, success is not always the big equity statement, the big, strategic change for the organization that was, blasted in the media. I invite everybody on this call to think for a second about that one teacher in your life. And I don't even have to say more, right? Everybody knows that one teacher. And we can talk for ages, and I'm sure we will on a separate unlearning, about unlearning the Industrial Revolution education model, right? But everybody has that one teacher. And sometimes in this work, all you can be is that person for somebody in their organization. When they thought nobody cared about this microaggression, nobody cared about this macroaggression, nobody cared, because I have a legacy of being in organizations and nobody cares, and you're there in that moment saying, not only do I care, but I built a system to help elevate this and to hopefully reach some sort of resolution, right? That is powerful in a world that has taught many people in target rank identities that your story doesn't matter and that you should just sit on it and you should eat it. So, I offer that too, that sometimes not every day you come to this work and you get to save the world, but you can save a person.
This is Sonia, and I'll say that that's so true, Lindsay. We need to soak that in, because we think big, but it's really, I always think DEI is building a community, one that's rooted in anti-oppression, of course, but it's a community where you come and you feel understood and heard and valued. And even if the systems, which take so long to change, and they've been embedded for so long, it's not going to, unless it's a revolution, this is not going to change overnight. But if there's someone who understands and says, yes, it's not in your mind, there's often a relief in that. that frees you up to go heal from whatever harm has been caused to you. And when you are healed, then you're better able to interact and deal with these systems. So I just want to say yes to that. What you just said, that is absolutely, I think, the most important thing about the DEI journey.
This is Lindsay. Let's open it up to the audience. Any questions for this amazing panel? Feel free to drop it in the chat window or come off of mute and ask. What do we have today?
I have a question as your number two. I'm curious, like, what advice do you have for people who are trying to get DEI started at their company? Like, how would those people pitch the value of it?
Ava?
This is Ava. Why do you always pick on me for these hard questions?
Because it always looks like you're already like, I can tell you're thinking things when the words are like.
Yeah, I was thinking, I get this question quite often. And I think it really depends on the organization, like where you're starting. For me, I'm a former engineer. I'm very like process oriented. And whenever I'm going to start something new, I need to understand the lay of the land. So for me, I always need to do some type of landscape scan, some assessment to get to know the current thoughts, the current perspectives, the current state of where things are. And I mean, you can do an extensive assessment, going deep, looking at documents, but you can also just do a survey, right? And ask people how they're doing, or you could set up informal conversations and talk to people in different departments, but really trying to get an understanding of what the need is, what the gaps are, where the holes are, before really deciding what you're going to do to make change, because sometimes we don't have enough information and we end up launching these haphazard solutions or interventions that are bound to fail because you haven't, listened to what the real needs are. And so that's where I would always start with an organization or even within yourself, just trying to understand first, what do I have? What skills, tools, and what am I lacking?
Thank you.
Absolutely.
This is Sonia. I want to add to that. Organizational silence, that's where I always say you start there. Because people are silent about their pain. You know what Zora Neale Hurston said? If you're silent about your pain, people will ignore it and say that you enjoyed it. People will kill you and say that you enjoyed it. And it's really important that you empower people to speak up, because then it doesn't become you going to leaders and saying, people are feeling this way. You create an environment where people can then talk and say to the leaders. And so if you are looking as a way to start, I always think creating that psychological safety is very, very important. And so it doesn't turn into you being a mouthpiece. So many DEI people are, they go into organizations and then everyone just comes and dumps their pain onto them and then expects them to go off and be the mouthpiece for them. And your job is not your job, because then you do it alone. Your job is to create the environment so people, employees, can speak up for themselves and be able to tell leaders so that people don't begin to think that you are the problem.
Oof, this is Lindsay. I cannot echo that enough. And I can't even think of the word, but to what I said earlier, that so many times, and we talk about this in our Enneagram of bias model, for those 8-9-1s, for those gut types, for that anger triad, that comes to the work of liberation because they are hurting and they want to make other people hurt. And that is not the work of liberation. You do not start this work from, I am hurting and I want to get revenge. I want to make other people hurt. That is just vengefulness, right? And yet, you know, in the DEI field, we see a lot of consultants who have put their hat out or put their sign out, and that's what they've come to the work to do. They've come to get even. And that is just not the work of diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEIB, or JEDI, or JEIB. That's just not the work. And so what Sonia's saying is so powerful, that you, in your role as leader, DEI champion, DEI consultant, whatever, you are meant to be empowering people to be able to have discourse, to be able to take collective action, to navigate differences, allowing that differences are always going to have mess about them, but it is how we navigate those differences, how we broker repair when it is needed. It is not for you to become savior, judge, and jury within this work. And as Sonia said, that is hopefully a part of DEI that is dying, right? That we have people saying, I'm going to come do the work and I'm going to be dehumanizing other people while feeling that I am valid in doing that because I have been hurt in some way based on some identity marker of my own.
Hey, Lindsay, I'm just going to add on to what all of you said about, you know, kind of the human part of this, which is so important. And then there's also a technical part of this that I wanted to make sure I got a plug in for the article that Lily Zhang recently published in HBR. And I think Amy's got that link. It's called How to Effectively and Legally Use Racial Data for DEI, because being able to understand the racial makeup and, you know, the different dimensions of diversity in your workforce is still very important. And I think there are some people that think because of the DEI or because of the Supreme Court ruling around affirmative action, that there is some, you know, misinterpretation of what that means for being able to collect data. And so I thought that the article that Lily wrote really gives some very key points of what to do and what not to do. And that I think this is one of the things that, you know, makes this area of HR and organizational development. It has a human component and a people development component that's so vital, and it has to come first. And there are legal issues that, again, in an effective implementation within an organization, you want to make sure that you're using data effectively. And of course, that means using data in ways that are not illegal. And so we can do both. And again, that's kind of where, again, you want to have well-informed and evidence-informed practitioners doing this work. So they're not telling you, you know, to do things that are not going to be, that are going to get you into legal trouble.
Yes, this is Lindsay. Thank you so much for saying that, Veronica, and cannot encourage enough the reading of that piece in HBR. As we wrap up today, I just want to offer, Ross asked a question about what we do as DEI practitioners to work through our own triggers, secondary trauma. And Ross, what I would say is that when training our team in my own practice, we very much approach this work like counselors, in that you have to have a community around you to process the work. We used to, and I know Sonia is still kind of running it, we have a Thursday morning session with other consultants just to have our coffee and tea and say, girl, you would not believe, right? That is important in this work. And I also want to encourage you to check out, I think Auntie Barb Chamberlain is on the call today. And my mother, we had a session with them around December last year, talking about being in this work. They've been in my mother for, 50 plus years, Barb a little less, but thinking about, within this work, one of the things that has to keep you coming to the work is your love for people. But when you love people and you do this work, you will also be reminded that you hate people, right? And that is the science. That is psychometry, right? Like, you keep coming back because you love the science of how people engage. And when you allow that type of psychological distance, it's not about you. It's about the practice. It's about the work. It's about the scientific exploration. It creates a type of psychological safety that I think all three of these amazing panelists also practice. Dear beloved, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you, as always, for spending the first Wednesday of the month with us. We look forward to seeing you same time, same place next month, hopefully on the flip side of some rest, some relaxation, some vitamin D. Take care of yourself and take care in the affirmation that DEI is not dead, just performative. DEI died a slow, nasty, and necessary death. Happy Wednesday. Bye.